Hey everyone, my name is Ariel,
And my name's Alejandro,
and this is the Call to Greatness podcast.
where we have conversations about life, mental health, and God.
Join us on this journey. Hey everyone, my name is Ariel,
And my name's Alejandro.
and welcome back to episode 2 of the CTG podcast. We are excited to be back. We're still recording in December. As you guys can see, we didn't leave the Christmas tree up past December or past, by the time this debuts, past Christmas. So, we're still recording in December. But before we get into the topic, what have you been up to?
I've been up to a lot of running around this month. I've been trying to do some side projects that I've been wanting to do. Trying to commit more to the gym. And yeah, just a little busy this month. What about you, Ariel?
Busy also. I'm also trying to commit more time to the gym. I feel like I've been okay at going like 2 times a week, but I
Yeah.
really want to hit that like at least 4 times.
Yeah.
That like make 4 my minimum, where if I don't go 4, it's like bad, but if I go more than 4, it's good.
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
thing, But like today at the gym, this guy just I was doing standing calf raise,
Yeah.
and this guy comes up and he's like, "Hey, do you mind if I jump in with your sets, like just so we can go back and forth?" I was like, "Yeah, sure, whatever." Like I didn't think much of it, right? And then he's like, a little word of advice, like try starting a little bit lower, set the thing a little lower, and he started giving me exercise advice on how to properly exercise my calves. And by the time I walked out of the gym today, I was like, man, I'm so sore, I'm like the most sore I've been at the gym in a while, but which is fine, it's good. But then I was like, I also had to go to the mall right after to go do Christmas shopping. And I was like, this is not going to go well. But I ended up being okay. We'll see how I feel tomorrow morning.
Yeah.
But it turns out he gave me his card afterwards. He's a cancer survivor. He is like a personal trainer and stuff. So, he's just like giving me free advice. I was like, cool.
Yeah, walking around the mall is like a exercise on its own. And
yeah.
that's cool. If you notice, like, the people who go through things and survive to them are the ones who really give back the most.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think that's awesome, man.
That is, yeah. So it was cool to have someone, even though I didn't ask for advice, give it in a way that was like kind and didn't make me feel bad about what I was doing and stuff. Yeah. And now I'm gonna have good calves. So
Good calves.
I can thank that guy.
Good calves.
Man, I wish I brought his card. It's somewhere in my house. But anyway.
Shout out to you, man.
Shout out to a guy at the gym. I don't know. Maybe episode 3 I'll find that card.
Hopefully.
But yeah. Well, when we were, let's get, if we're getting into the topic, when we were kind of deciding what we were going to talk about for episode 2, we came across a quote that we thought at the time when we were first kind of brainstorming the idea and sort of creating the concept. We thought this quote was from Albert Einstein, and as soon as I say it, everyone's gonna know that they're gonna be like, "Isn't that like that's Albert Einstein or whatever?" And the quote was, "The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results." Yes. Right? So, I did a little bit of research. Well, I did I went kind of down a rabbit hole that ended up being a good what's the segue or pathway for me to do my side of the research for the podcast. And I found out that it doesn't have an exact origin. So there's not one single person being like they're the ones responsible for that quote, because even the quote itself, it's like it kind of evolved. People came up with ideas about that, but it's existed. And when I was doing the research, I ended up on the History Channel website.
Oh wow.
That's how in depth I went. And they were talking about how some of the earliest versions of that quote were from the 19th century. So the late 1800s. And some of that stuff, I won't talk about because apparently it came out in a book by I believe it was a German guy or something. I have the article here, but I don't really want to touch too much on that because it was basically him criticizing artists who had a lot of repetition in their art, and kind of just berating them and calling them human garbage for, for having repetition in their art. And I'm like, this is way out there. But what I did find really interesting was the more modern origin of it. So I think everybody's heard of Alcoholics Anonymous, right?
Yes.
And the original version of that was just called like Al-Anon or something similar to that. And this was back in the 1980s, I believe, where there was a group in 1981 that met. And I'm going to pull up the article really quick so I don't get the quote wrong and what it actually says incorrect, because I don't want to misquote this because it's a little out there, but bear with me. When I was reading this, is that the earliest strong match is known to have appeared in October of 1981 within a Knoxville, Tennessee newspaper article describing a meeting of Al-Anon, an organization designed to help the families of alcoholics. The journalist described the 12 steps of Al-Anon, which are based on similar steps employed in Alcoholics Anonymous. The newspaper began with these 2 steps. We admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. Step 2, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. One of the attendees at the meeting hesitated to accept the accuracy of the second step. Not all the women were willing to admit they needed to be restored to sanity. In fact, one of them adamantly maintains that she had never reached the point of insanity. But another remarks, insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. And then what I found really interesting is literally a month later, November 1981, Narcotics Anonymous, it says that somebody was quoted in a pamphlet by Narcotics Anonymous was quoted as saying, as having this excerpt from it, which says, "The price may seem higher for the addict who prostitutes for a fix than it is for the addict who merely lies to a doctor. But ultimately, both pay with their lives. Insanity is repeating the same mistakes and expecting different results." So when I came across this article, I was fascinated because, I thought, wow, like the modern origin of the word, or what we kind of know it to be, is based on organizations that help people with addictions.
Yes.
Which is a very, very powerful thing to be. Like, what before I go any further, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I believe we fall into that a lot. I reminded right now when you were talking about the doctor, said people. There's a quote from Tony Robbins, and it says, "People will do much more to gain. People will do much more to avoid pain than they will to gain pleasure." And I think we do that all the time. Where we avoid doing the right thing, and we just fall into the thing that's more comfortable, right? It's easier to do this because if I face what's in front of me, I don't know what's behind that, right? And I think as humans, we want to be certain, of every step that we take, and it's that fear of uncertainty that holds us back from actually facing what's in front of us, and we just fall into that comfort zone of like not wanting to change because like, well, this is what I know and it's working all right for me, so why change it, And I think I think as men too, we fall into that of like, it's working out, don't change it, like it's going and it's running or whatever, so like don't touch it, but it's, and you said that we fall into death, right, and it's like the there's this thing, it's called the boiling frog fable, something like that, don't quote me, but it's like the way to kill a frog is to put it in room temperature water and slowly turn up the heat, and the frog swims to its death.
Yeah, I've heard that. Yeah. Like, I believe Pastor Nemi might have used that, maybe not this past Sunday, but like recently enough that that I remember it. And he said, if you put a frog in like cold water or room temperature water, or I forgot exactly the example that the version that he quoted, but he said that if you put a frog in a pot with water and you slowly, like little by little, raise the temperature of the water to the point where it's boiling, you'll boil the frog to death.
Yeah, and I think that's what we do with our comfort, and we might not look at it that way, like, oh, like I'm not gonna die from this, like one beer, right? But it's like, well, then it becomes 2 beers, and then it becomes 2 beers every day, and then it becomes, beers on beers or whatever. It's like something that's not it's not just beer, but like, you know, like
Right. The habit.
yeah, the habit of doing something that isn't good for ourselves, and the accumulation over time of it hurting us, right?
Yeah.
So it might not be right now, right? And it's that instant gratification, you know, like that we need to learn to delay, which is like very hard to do. Well, it's not very hard. It's doable, you know, but
It's doable, but it's difficult. Yeah.
yes.
Speaking of which, I looked over while you were saying that, and I'm like, this looks like beer, but it's green tea.
No, Ariel is not having a cold one.
Not in the middle of a podcast. No, in the middle of a recording, like, you know, 2/3 of the way into the podcast, it's like people are watching. They're like, he's slurring his words down. No, it's green tea, but this camera lighting doesn't make it look like green tea. But anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to distract that.
No.
You said beer, and I'm like,
Beer.
this is
Yeah.
incriminating, but yeah, it's okay.
Yeah, it's fun. Yeah.
Yeah, no, definitely. When, you know, I always didn't, or when I would first hear that story or metaphor, that's the word I'm looking for, metaphor of the frog, I was like, I don't get it. Like, how do you apply that? And I feel like a lot of people would kind of just use that to be like, they wouldn't explain it well, you know? I don't remember exact examples, but I feel like I haven't heard a lot of people explain it well. Pastor Nemi did a pretty good job. We're not using the exact application he used that time, but I do know that he explained that pretty well. And, you know, I love that you brought that up because, like you said, we kind of do that to ourselves. You know, at first it's a little bit, and then you're like, you become comfortable with that, so you increase it. And before you know it, it's completely out of control, right? The frog doesn't realize that it's in trouble until it's dead. You know, looking at this excerpt from the pamphlet of the Narcotics Anonymous, you know, the first part of this specifically is the price may seem higher for the addict who prostitutes for a fix than it is for the addict who merely lies to a doctor, but ultimately both pay with their lives. You know, people are like, they like to shift blame, you know, where you're like, well, I'm not, maybe not even, sorry, not shift blame, compare, where you go, well, I'm not as bad as that person, so I'm okay, you know, or like, well, I haven't passed out when I get, like, I haven't gone blackout drunk, so I'm okay to be a little drunk, you know, but it's like, the more comfortable you get with a bad habit. And again, I know we keep using the example of beer, but just because it's kind of what the
kind of what Ariel's drinking right now. Just kidding.
No, I wish. No, just kidding. No. Can you? No, I'm kidding. No, but you know, it's kind of the example that it gives us here with the Alcoholics Anonymous, where even the world knows that the first step to beating any kind of addiction, which again, at its basis, an addiction is a bad habit, right?
Yes.
To take into an extreme, but it's a bad habit. The first step is that you have to admit that you have a problem, because if you're just kind of looking at it as like, well, I'm not that bad yet. You're just like, it's a form of procrastination where you're just shifting the problem to the future, where you're like, well, I'm not that bad yet. But why would you wait to address a problem when it is already that bad? You know, like, why not address it when it's manageable? And
it's just that same thing again, you know, like, people will do much more to avoid pain than they will to gain pleasure, you know. And I fall into that too. It's not as extreme, you know, but like, I'm trying to learn how to play the guitar, right? And like, I'm avoiding the practice because I'm associating with like some sort of pain. Like, I'm like, oh, you know, it's kind of late. Like, you know, like I mentioned, I've been running around all day, so I really don't get home until like 10 or something. And it's like, oh, I need to go to bed or something, you know. So like, I'm avoiding practicing because, like, you know, sleep is important, you know. But I really do want to play the guitar, you know. But it's like a form of, you know, like procrastination and things of that nature. And I liked how you said that we must admit that there is a fault, you know. And I feel like we don't get to that point until we face it, you know. And like, and we need to stop that procrastination. And I think a lot of times in our Christian walk, you know, when we're continuing doing these faults, it's because we're pretty much yet to embrace our new identity, in God. Um, I remember one of the guys in the men's group actually said that it's kind of like embarrassing to like ask God for forgiveness for the
Right,
things
yeah.
you're not supposed to do, but yet we continue to do them, you know. And it's like kind of this like Mark Manson. He wrote a book. It's called The Subtle Art of Not Giving a F. But I'm not
right, yeah.
but and he mentions this thing called the feedback loop from hell, and basically it's resisting the negative. It's the resistance to negative experiences that just creates and compounds further negative experiences. So like if you're feeling anxious, you become anxious, and it's just like this loop of anxiousness, And I know I fell into that once I got this new identity in Christ. I was like, okay, like I'm saved, I feel pure at the moment, right? But then it's like you feel safe like in the church, when you're praying and you're worshiping, and like, but then it's like when you go out, out to the world, where it's like, oh dang, like I don't want to sin, like but the truth is we're gonna sin, we're gonna mess up, we're not perfect. I just think we just need to continue asking for forgiveness. Because if we stop asking for forgiveness, then we lead into this like denial that like, oh, we're this thing that I'm doing, I'm not inviting God into it because like I don't think it's a problem, but like it probably is, a problem, and when we go into denial, it hardens our heart, and in Proverbs 28:14, let me bring it up. Sorry.
So while you bring that up, I wanted to let's see if I can find it if it was on here or no, I don't have it either. Wow. we promised we did a lot of research, guys. But maybe we did too much this time. Who knows?
Too much, right?
Going back a little bit really quick. We were talking about habits before you, or do you have it?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, it says, "Blessed is the one who fears the Lord always, but whoever hardens his heart will fall into calamity." And you fall into distress and disaster, and it's again, like I said, it's because we haven't embraced our new identity in God.
Right. Yeah. So this whole thing of identity, I think it has a lot to do with our habits. I was seeing something about the difference between doing the right thing out of like self-righteousness, out of having like a good moral code, and the difference between doing the good thing for God, like actually living like a holy life, like a moral life versus a holy life. What was the difference? And one of the things was that kind of struck me was that like with the moral side, it's like you do the right thing to feel good, to like appease your consciousness, right? You avoid bad things because that's what morally you're supposed to do or whatever. But when you're living a holy life, you genuinely dislike those things. You genuinely reject those things, regardless of whether you're going to get like a high five or like a good job. You just do it for your own spiritual growth and your own spiritual health. And, that was, I think, really important to me because it's a change of mind. It's a change of mentality. I remember, I believe it was, I know I've heard more than one person say this, but I think the first time I heard it was the drummer for a group that I was playing with back in the day, Alpha Love. His drum teacher told him something along the lines that like practice does not make perfect. Practice makes habit. Right. So, like, because everybody knows that quote too. Like, this one's not really attributed to anyone, but everybody knows the quote. Practice makes perfect. Like, we use it for everything. Like, you need to practice the instrument more, or you need to practice or go to the gym more or whatever, like to get better at something. We just drop the phrase practice makes perfect. But really, practice makes habit. If you're practicing something bad, like you like to get high, or you like to get drunk, or you like to, watch porn or whatever. If you practice that, it becomes a habit as well. So it's not like practicing something is automatically a good thing.
Right.
Whatever you do a lot of, it becomes a habit.
Right.
And that's where it becomes really, really dangerous, because once it becomes a habit, it becomes part of your comfort zone. And I know that's a term that a lot of people hate to talk about, stepping out of your comfort zone, because we all hate to do it. We all hate to step out of our comfort zone. And, when we look at our comfort zone, a lot of people, a lot of times just look at just complacency, like, oh, I'm not doing anything bad. I'm just okay here. But we're not really talking about complacency here. We're talking about something a lot worse, which is even habits that are harming you. When they've become a habit, they're easier to deal with than solving the problem. So when you get a splinter, if it's like, a little bit deeper, a lot of times you have to get like nail clippers and kind of tear the skin open a little bit and get the splinter out. I've seen people have to get like a needle to like stab inside, make a hole, and then get some tweezers to like yank it out kind of thing. And of course it hurts.
Yes.
You're taking a needle and stabbing your own skin. Of course it hurts. But the alternative is to just leave the splinter inside. And short term, it might just be some irritation. A little bit more long term, if you really leave it a long time, is that it could get infected. It can give you problems. It could get, if you start to get like dirt or just germs in there, it's going to get really nasty. And then you're going to have a much bigger skin problem. But so then why are some people afraid to just take out the splinter? Because it's that first momentary pain that you're afraid of.
Yes.
Right? You're afraid of just dealing with the problem because the problem is a little bit less painful than the solution. Even if the problem is going to hurt you in the long run, you're like, I'd rather just like have this small pain forever than to have a stronger pain for 1 second.
All right. And you're preaching to the choir on like an exact note. So I actually have a splinter that's stuck in my tricep.
Should we stop the podcast to the splinter?
No, like my skin closed.
Oh my goodness.
And like it's a little good piece that's like stuck in my arm. And I mentioned going to the gym, right? So, and like I was working on my arms, and like lately it's been bothering me. Like I feel it, and I'm like, dude, like I'm scared to feel that pain, because since the skin is closed now, like I think I have to probably go to the doctor or the hospital to
maybe
to cut it open. And like
maybe we should take you after we finish recording.
And like dude, exactly, like I remember like the splinter got in me, and I was like, oh dang, it hurts, and I didn't want to touch it because it was, like I said, I'm being for real, it's like a good size, like it's that was in there. And I was like, I remember I would touch it and it would move, and I was like, oh, I don't want to mess with it, right? Because I just didn't want to mess with it because I didn't want to feel the pain. And I was like, exactly, like I was avoiding that pain instead of getting pleasure of the release, and like the comfort is just
like it's just done.
And like I'm like, I know I'm letting it chill in there, like okay, I'm not perfect, guys. And I'm gonna take my own advice, your advice, Ariel, and I'm gonna make an appointment.
Make an appointment.
Yes. Do that after the podcast. No, but yes. Sorry.
Well, yeah, I think, I mean, I didn't know that. So I definitely was not trying to call you out, but I mean, I use it as an example because it's just something that, like, again, even if it's a big chunk, it's still a splinter, right? It's still small. So a small thing can cause a bigger problem, right? It's just that it starts out small. Like we were saying earlier, you start out small and then you build it, you go, well, it's not that bad yet. It's not that bad yet. You keep telling yourself that it's not that bad yet. It's not that bad yet, until it grows and it grows and it grows and it grows. Now, the reason that we even bring up the whole thing of like insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results is it's pretty simple. When we face similar problems, we tend to default to what we're used to. A lot of times it's easier to be angry than to address the problem that's actually happening. Especially, I think, as men, a lot of times we have either been taught or just have come to a point where we feel like that's what's expected of us, to just be strong, right? So to cry, to be emotional, to actually allow yourself to feel,
Mm-hmm.
it's seen almost as weakness.
Right.
So you're not really addressing the problem. So you're just like, I'm just gonna be strong. I'm just gonna be strong. Okay, but what are you doing? What are you doing about the problem?
Yeah.
And that in itself is also a habit, where when you're faced with a difficult situation, when you're going through something, when you're starting to develop another bad habit, you default to what you're comfortable with, and
Mm-hmm.
that's what we mean by comfort zone. Do you remember? I don't know if did you ever watch any of the Narnia movies?
Yeah, I believe I did.
In the last one that came out, this was still a long time ago, but the last one that came out, there's a point where one of the kids turns into a dragon, and he gets like stabbed with a sword, right?
Mm-hmm.
And eventually he has to like take the sword out, and then when he is in his dragon form, Aslan, who is a like the god figure in their universe, has to transform him back into a dragon. So when he meets up with the other kids, they ask him like, "Hey, did it hurt?" And he was like, "Yeah, kind of," but he was like, "It's like a necessary pain." And because he had also been like stabbed with a sword, he's like, "It's like taking a sword out of your sword out of your foot or something like that." I don't remember the exact quote from the movie, but I always thought that was interesting because it's like that phrase, it's a necessary pain, right? That is a term that we as people don't like to use, right? Because we don't like pain. Like the quote that you said, people will do a lot more to avoid pain than to gain pleasure. We hate pain.
Yes.
Right? We'll do anything to avoid pain. If we have to deal with smaller pains over a long time, we prefer that over one big hit. It's why credit is even a thing, right?
Yeah.
Because we'd rather be like, if we look at an item that says $200, but it's like, oh, do 6 payments or do 5 payments with no interest or whatever. We're like, okay, so it's not $200. It's this many. It's this much a month, right? But it's like, or how about this? Save up $200 and then buy the thing. But if you have to drop 200, you're like, oh, that feels expensive.
Yeah.
But if you have to spread it out, you're like, oh, that wasn't that bad. It's still 200. You didn't spend less. You spent the same amount. You just spent it over. Oh, sorry. You just spent it over like a longer amount of time.
Right.
And so for us as humans, that's what we like. We don't want to go, okay, what's the problem at hand? Let's address it. It's kind of like, how do we just like put a little like bandage over the problem?
Yeah.
Like, it's why drugs are even a thing, because rather than addressing the pain, we just numb it. I remember when I herniated my disc, herniated a disc in my back a little over 3 years ago, or almost 4 years ago. Wow, it's been a long time. One of the things that, somebody, after I went to the doctor, they asked me like, oh, what pain medication do they have you on? I was like, oh, I'm taking this, and this. They were like, okay, make sure that you don't take it too much and only take it till you like however long you're supposed to. But he's like, make sure that you allow yourself to be in pain. And I was like, I'm sorry, what? I've herniated disc. Yeah. Like, I don't know. Do you know what you mean? And he told me like, yeah, I used to have not a herniated disc, but he's like, I had a back injury when I was younger too. He's like, the problem with the painkillers is that they numb the pain. They don't address the problem. They address the symptoms.
Yes.
And so he was like, if you're in pain, you'll want to address the problem and you'll want to fix it faster. He's like, you'll do what the physical therapy is telling you to do. You'll be more inclined to hurry up and lose weight so there's less strain on your back. You'll be more inclined to work out so that you strengthen your core and there's this, less strain on the bones of your spine. He's like, but if you're just taking pills, you'll let the problem last longer because you'll forget that problem is there because you're not addressing the problem. You're just numbing the pain.
Yeah. And like that's like the instant gratification of not having to deal, right? Like, oh, like, yeah, I got this work to do, but I'll just go on Instagram. It's like, I'll avoid it for a bit, and then like, I'll just go on for 10 minutes and then it's like 2 hours later.
We've all been there. Where you're just like, oh, I'm going to scroll for a little bit. What do you mean it's been 2 hours?
Yeah. And exactly like how we talk about it goes from like 20 minutes to 2 hours. And exactly with like painkillers, it could have gone from like spending less time on that medication to more time, and then probably becoming an addiction.
Mm-hmm.
And I think also that has to do with you mentioned facing our problems right there. I think that also has to do with emotional maturity, right?
Absolutely.
Because when you become a man, right, you become more effective and you get things done quicker because as a man you handle what's in front of you, and you're effective and you take care of it right there. You don't let it prolong. That's like I've heard this thing. I've heard in books, right, where like say like you tell your girl that you're gonna throw out the trash, but you don't, and now she's upset with you because you gave her your word that you were gonna do this task, but you didn't, and right now she has to test you to make sure that you're still that man, right? So like I believe that comes with time too, with that emotional maturity, and emotional maturity comes too with like facing our problems. Like I said, I think we're scared to face that uncertainty of what's going to happen, because we are in that comfort zone, and in that comfort zone we can just cruise, like.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So I want to bring up Romans chapter 12, verse 2, for anybody who wants to turn with us there, and who's listening or watching. Romans chapter 12, verse 2 says, "Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind, that by testing you may discern what is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect." I'm going to read it one more time really quick. "Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind, that by testing you may discern what is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect."
Yeah.
So, we've been talking about how when we have these bad habits, we do kind of we repeat the same pattern, expecting things to get better on their own. Like if I was taking those pills, I expected to take the pills until like the problem would just go away. Like, is that a solution? No, that's not how it works. I had to address the problem. But like you said, we're in our comfort zone. We're used to we're cruising.
Yeah.
It's easy where we're at. Even if long term it's going to cost us more harm, it's what we're used to. It's where we're comfortable. So then how do we step out of that? I think Romans chapter 12 gives us that answer when he says, "Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind." We have to change our mindset.
Mm-hmm.
It has to start with, like, it has to be a personal thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like how we were talking about earlier, that step one is admitting that we have a problem. We have to begin with us. If somebody comes to tell you you have a problem, you won't be as inclined to change anything than the moment when you realize, oh, I do have a problem. I do have to change something. But it starts with a change of mind, right? Because it's not a physical thing, but rather a mental thing. It's a change of heart. When we go from I'm okay where I'm at, I don't have a problem, it's not that bad yet, to I need a change. I need to fix this. I need to address the problem, right? And I think that, when it says be transformed by the renewal of your mind, who's doing that renewal? Who's doing that transforming? It's God. When we give ourselves to God, when we turn ourselves completely to God, He's going to change how we view things. He's going to change the way that, I'm making too much noise today. He's going to change the way we think. He's going to change how we react to things, rather than doing the same habit over and over and over, that's kind of the way that the world does things, which is just do the same thing and, expect it to just change on its own. God allows us to be like, you need to be different. You need to have your mind renewed.
Right. And I think to achieve that renewal, right, it's in the stillness that we find that we truly like see ourselves. I like this quote from Pascal. It says, "All of humanity's problems stem from a man's inability to sit quietly in a room alone," right? Because we're kind of scared of it. Well, I'm not trying to speak for everybody, but we're scared of our thoughts, scared of what we have to face, you know. And I know that this year especially, I feel like a lot of people have been given that opportunity, you know, to sit quietly, you know, like waiting for the world to come back, you know. But you know, we have this opportunity of stillness to truly evaluate ourselves and reflect on our lives and reflect, you know, what is essential and what is not essential, you know. It,
Mm-hmm.
and I love that because it has to start with us, and no one can tell us that. I can't come to you, Ariel, and tell you like, hey, you know, you need to change this, you know, like I can, you know, like dog you all day for saying you need to change this or whatever, but like it has to, this change starts with you, you know, as much as you want that change for somebody else, like your coach, you know, your coach might want you to do this to succeed, but like if you don't want to do that act to succeed, then it's never going to happen.
Absolutely, yeah. And I love that you used the example of the fact that when we're facing this pandemic, you know, how, like you said, everybody wants things to go back to normal. It, a lot of the things that we were doing were not working, but we were used to how they worked.
Right.
So we were used to how the world worked. It's not that the world was perfect. So then, instead of, like, why didn't, when we as a human race face this pandemic, why wasn't our thought, I hope we come out of this better. I hope we come out of this different.
Right.
Why was everybody's first reaction? And I mean, it's been what, 10 months now?
Yeah.
I mean, other countries, we live in the US, so it's been 10 months. I know some people might be like, well, Australia, like, yeah, we know, or other, New Zealand has been like, I know, we get it. We messed up here in the US, but it's been 10 months and there are still people that are like, I can't wait for things to go back to the way they were. I can't wait for things to go back to normal. And it's like, well, why not maybe look at this as an opportunity for us to grow as a human race? What were we doing wrong? Never in history did we have such a chance where the world had came to such a standstill that we could evaluate what we were doing wrong as a society, as humans, and say, well, what can we do better?
Right.
And yet, when given that opportunity, our reaction was, I want everything to go back to normal. I want everything to go back to the way things were.
Yeah.
Not because they were perfect. I mean, does anybody think that the world was perfect before the pandemic? I don't think that it was. I'm not saying that we're better off now or whatever, but I don't think that it was perfect. I don't think that we were anywhere close to perfect. So then why do we so desperately want things to go back to normal or the way things were? It's because it's what we were used to.
Yeah. And that is not everybody's first thought, like what you just said right now.
Oh, no.
You know?
Right.
Some people might be like, what, this guy? But like, of course, it's the renewing of your mind, you know, changing your perspective, right? It has to start with you, you know, and you know, you're given this opportunity to really reflect on yourself. I would like to read from 1 John 1:8-10, and it says, if we say we have no sin, we deceive ourselves, and the truth is not in us. If we confess our sins, he is faithful and just to forgive us our sins and to cleanse us from all unrighteousness. If we say we have not sinned, we make him a liar, and his word is not in us. Right? And I feel like that has to do with, you know, like, of course, that we have sinned and we need to confess it to God, and we need to invite God into our lives to help us. And
I think that passage also exemplifies perfectly even the steps that, and it's going to sound funny, but even like Alcoholics Anonymous, even they understand it, right?
Yeah.
Where it's like the first step to fixing a problem, or the first step to a solution. I don't remember the exact phrasing right now, but the first step to a solution is admitting that you have a problem.
Yeah.
Right? If it's like, it's what that passage is saying. It's like, if you say there's no sin in me, you're lying.
Yeah.
You know, like that's not how it works. Like it's being in denial.
Yeah. And Psalms 32:5 says, I acknowledge my sin to you, and I did not cover my iniquity. I said, I will confess my transgression to the Lord, and you forgave the iniquity of my sin. You know, and that's when we confess, we gain forgiveness and mercy. And sorry, I'm reading another verse, Proverbs 28:13. Whoever conceals his transgression will not prosper, but he will confess and forsake them will obtain mercy. Yeah, right. So if we don't confess that we have problems, we won't prosper in life, right? And I don't think it's that we want to, and forgiveness, there is forgiveness to God, and it's not an excuse to keep sinning because God forgives us, but forgiveness is the foundation to freedom, right? So we want to be free from these things, so like we have to ask for forgiveness, and of course we have to continue inviting God into our situations. We have to continue praying about it, and in that time, and it's believing in God in our faithfulness that He will set us free from whatever we're dealing with. Because if we don't believe that God forgives us, then we'll never be set free from our bondage. And just to read another verse from the Bible.
Go ahead, man.
Jeremiah.
I love that we have a lot of verses.
Jeremiah 3:22 says, "Return, O faithfulness sons, I will heal your faithfulness. Behold, we come to you, for you are the Lord our God." Right? And I believe it's submitting that our problems to God, and God tells us right here that that He's gonna heal us through our faithfulness.
Yeah, you're putting it perfectly. Even the Bible teaches us what a lot of people kind of understand, but maybe not biblically.
Yeah.
Where the first step to fixing the problem is that we have to admit that we even have a problem. If we're gonna eventually reach a solution, first we have to be like, well, I do have a problem. It's like going back to the metaphor of the splinter. If you keep telling yourself like, no, it's gonna be fine, it's gonna be fine, it's gonna be fine, then you're not gonna do anything about it because you think that it's fine.
Yeah.
If you go like, dang, it's stuck in there and it's gonna cause a problem, then you're gonna start looking for a solution. Same thing with with my back injury. If I relied purely on the painkillers to just be like, no, I'm okay because I don't feel pain because of the painkillers, then I wouldn't try and work hard at physical therapy because I'm like, well, what's the point? I don't feel pain. It wasn't until I kind of stopped relying on the painkillers to be like, okay, I have to find a solution so that I fix my back, so that my back stops hurting, not temporarily but permanently.
Right.
And I know a lot of people might be wondering like, well, how do we trust God? Well, Isaiah 55 verses 8 and 9 say, this is from God. It says, "For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, declares the Lord. For as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts." We a lot of times look at our comfort zone as like, well, I'm right because this is what I'm used to. Like, I'm fine here, I'm okay here. Like, I like the plans that I have for my life or whatever. Right. But right here, God's telling us like, well, I have different plans for you than you have for yourself. You know, like you're looking at, God's telling us here, like, you're looking at your life, like, you know what you're doing, but I have different plans for you. I have, but not just different, but like higher plans, like what he can do for us, what he's gonna, well, maybe not more importantly than for us, what he can do with us, what he can use us for is higher, is better than anything that we could really come up for ourselves.
Yeah, and I'm reminded too of Jeremiah 29 verse 11. "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans for welfare and not for evil, to give you a future and a hope." Right? And I love that because, like, a lot of times we think, oh, God is taking my freedom away, right? But like, we only experience freedom in God, in Christ, right? Because if we're doing things, if we're casting votes like for the devil, right? We're not free. This thing that we're doing, it's become a crutch, and we're relying on that, right? Because over time, I want to read this excerpt from this book, Atomic Habits by James Clear. And it says, "Each habit not only gets results, but also teaches you something far more important: to trust yourself. You start believing you can actually accomplish these things when the votes mount up and the evidence begins to change, the story you tell yourself begins to change as well. Of course, it works the opposite way too. Every time you choose to perform a bad habit, it's a vote for that identity. The good news is that you don't need to be perfect. In any election, there are going to be votes for both sides. You don't need a unanimous vote to win an election. You just need a majority. It doesn't matter if you cast a few votes for a bad behavior or an unproductive habit. Your goal is simply to win the majority of the time. New identities require new evidence. If you keep casting the same votes you're going to get the same results you've always had. If nothing changes, nothing is going to change. It's a simple two-step process. Declare the type of person you want to be and prove it to yourself with small wins, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I love that, right? Just declare it to yourself with small wins, right? So like coming to church, praying, doing things of that nature, right? And then just proving to yourself that you can walk with God, right? And of course, always praying and asking for forgiveness, inviting God into those situations.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Sorry, I just realized you can hear the train in the microphone, so we're sorry, guys. This is not the greatest soundproof room, but I didn't know it was that loud. Sorry, but no. I love that excerpt that you just read. I think I'm gonna read that book because there's this metaphor. I'm sure you've heard it. It's a really, really popular metaphor where it's like inside you there are two wolves that are at war with each other. The one who wins is the one you feed, you know?
Yes.
And just like it's saying here, if you cast votes for the same habits, I don't remember exactly how it was, but it was like you're gonna get the same results that you've always had.
Right.
Do you have it there to read it again really quick?
Yes. Read the whole thing.
Just the part about if you cast the votes for the same habits, or
you don't need a unanimous vote to win the election. You just need a majority. It doesn't matter if you cast a few votes for a bad behavior or an unproductive habit. Your goal is simply to win the majority of the time.
Can you keep going?
New identities require new evidence. If you keep casting the same votes you've always cast, you're going to get the same results you've always had. If nothing changes, nothing is going to change. It's a simple two-step process. To decide the type of person you want to be and prove it to yourself with small wins.
Exactly. That's the part that I was looking for. You know, the whole point of this topic is to remind people that if you don't make a choice, it's got to start somewhere, right? And it's just like it says in the book. It's not going to be perfect 100% of the time. It's not about being always perfect. It's about the small wins. But if you don't start somewhere with that decision that I need to do something different because what I've been doing hasn't worked up until now, then nothing's ever going to change.
Right.
You know, if we keep making the same mistakes, we're going to get the same results, right? If you're conducting an experiment to prove a theory, you want to do different things to get different results, right? To analyze data. If you conduct an experiment and you do it 5 times exactly the same way, you're going to get 5 identical results.
Yeah.
Right? So what do? You conducted 5 different ways to see what kind of results you get. And in life, it's just like that. You know, if you want a different result than what you have now, if you're not happy with where you're at in life, who you are, you have to make a change. You have to go out of your way to make a change in your life. And the first step to that is admitting that there is a problem to begin with, right? If there's nothing productive about self-deprecation and being like, oh, life sucks, this sucks, my situation sucks. What are you going to do about it, right? Because a lot of the times we think that it's someone else's fault. we think that it's not because of us. Somebody else caused this problem or whatever. But when we start to think, what can I change? What habits have I been doing that have caused me to get to this point, right? What can I change in my life to affect a long-term change to get me where I want to be, to become the person that I actually want to be rather than the person that I am currently? And it could be socially, it could be morally, it could be in your relationships, it could be even physically, you know? If you want to get in shape, what have you been doing that you know is not good? Do you eat cheeseburgers every day for dinner, you know? Like, what habits are you doing that you know are bad, but you keep doing them?
Yeah, and I'm gonna read another excerpt from the book. It says, "You have the power to change your beliefs about yourself. Your identity is not set in stone. You have a choice in every moment. You can choose the identity you want to reinforce today with the habits you choose today." And this brings us to the deeper purpose of this book and the real reason habits matter. Building better habits isn't about littering your day with life hacks. It's not about flossing one tooth each night or taking a cold shower each morning or wearing the same outfit each day. It's not about achieving external measures of success like earning more money, losing weight, or reducing stress. Habits can help you achieve all these things, but fundamentally, they are not about having something, they are about becoming someone. Ultimately, your habits matter because they help you become the type of person you wish to be. They are the channel through which they are the channel through which you develop your deepest beliefs about yourself. Quite literally, you become your habits, right? And that's like the same thing, like what they say, like you are what you eat, right? And I remember you shared off air, the guy that was helping you at the gym, right? Like he showed you how to hit your calves in 3 different angles,
Right.
right? And it's like if you just went to the gym and just did the regular thing that you knew, right? You probably wouldn't have been able to get the same growth. And that I'm sure that guy showing you how to work your calves in 3 different angles expanded your mind to thinking I was like, wow, I just knew this one method, now I know 3 different methods, right? And it's like, like I'm trying to stop this bad habit, and I find that going on a run makes me feel better, right? Like watching comedy, can fulfill me the same way that this substance does or this bad habit does. But doing this opposite thing fills that habit in a better or more productive way.
Absolutely. Like, and I think what we're getting at here, it's the mindset.
Right.
When you change your mindset, I love that you said like you expanded your mind. Like how the guy was teaching me, it expanded my understanding of this exercise. I understood what I was doing more. I actually knew what I was supposed to be doing,
right,
as opposed to just what I was doing. And it's not even that what I was doing was like harmful to me, right? Let's not even take it as far as like the habits that are harmful.
Right.
It's not that my habit or my exercise was harmful, but rather there was a better version of it that could help me improve more, and that was like me stepping out of my comfort zone, because I was comfortable doing the exercise, just the up and down, like I was cool with that. But when this guy came over, after I was done, I was so sore, and it was burning and everything, but it's more effective. It's in the long term, it's going to be better. Is it make me more sore? Yes. Is it going to cause me more, like, I guess technically pain? It's a good kind of pain, soreness is not, a horrible thing, but is it going to cause, like, is it going to take more effort? Let's use that. Is it going to take more effort? Yes. But in the long term, it's how I'm supposed to work as opposed to how I was choosing to work.
Yeah. And, like, again, bringing up the gym, that calf exercise, and maybe you wondered, well, why am I doing this in 3 different angles? Well, it's like because there's 2 muscles in your calf, right? And to get more out of the workout, you have to do it in different angles, right? And it's the renewing of your mind. It's the right and expanding your mind, like, oh, it's like not just this one way, like there's alternate ways and different perspectives. I can look at this in different ways. I can work this out, right? It's not always this one way. It's not, your identity is not set in stone.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, let's wrap it up because I know we're going a little long than we wanted to, but ultimately it starts with a change of perspective, a change of mind. It's like you said, the renewing of your mind. Like the Bible says in Romans, it's the renewing of your mind. Once you learn to view things from a different perspective, specifically God's perspective and what God has for your life, as opposed to what you have for your own life, you're going to learn to change things in your life that you've been doing the same way for years maybe. And you've been hoping that it's eventually just gonna work itself out, but it just doesn't. So the goal here is to change our mind, change our perspective, and allow God to open up our minds, open up our hearts, so that we can view things from a better, more productive perspective, more productive angle, that isn't just the same old thing that we've always done.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Do you have any, I don't know if you had anything else to add, or
yeah, I just want to talk about like continuing to follow God and continue asking forgiveness, and with your faith, you will be forgiven. Matthew 10:22 says, and you will be hated by all for my name's sake, but the one who endures to the end will be saved. So it's a marathon, right? It's a marathon, and it continues, right? And Nipsey Hussle.
Yeah, I know. It's instant gratification versus long-term gratification,
Yeah.
And which one do you delayed? Thank you, delayed gratification. I couldn't remember the term, but instant gratification versus delayed gratification. Everybody's going for instant gratification because it's you want to feel good right now.
Right.
You don't want to work hard so you feel good later, but longer. But it's just a change of mindset, It's a change of mind. It's a change of perspective. And when we allow God into our lives, He sparks that change in us. Because it might be really hard to just change it on our own. But if we allow God into our lives, then He can enact that change in our lives. So if anyone out there feels like they've been doing the same thing over and over and over, and you're tired of getting the same old results, you're tired of just always ending up in the same spot that you've always ended up in, allow God into your life.
Yeah.
Allow God into your life and give Him a chance to change your mind. Give Him a chance to change the way that you think.
Yeah, we must, and I love that, and it's really submitting our will to God, and just allow Him to test our hearts and put us through trials, but, and if we endure to the end, we will be saved, right? And that's ultimately how we grow, not only as humans, but as Christians in our spiritual walk.
Absolutely. Well, guys, we're going to go ahead and wrap today's episode up. And once again, we just want to thank everybody for joining us. We will hopefully see some of you at CTG. We hope that you guys can make it out. We have this every 2 weeks here at our church. To anybody who's listening, anybody who has checked this out, anybody who is just, supporting this ministry, we're really, really grateful. We don't have any Patreon or anything like that just yet, but if you're listening to this and you want to support or you want to help us out in any shape, form, or way, just recommend it to someone, tell somebody to listen, give us a follow. We are at CTG Men on Instagram, and just hopefully we can get some followers, get some listeners into this. So we appreciate until we get some kind of Patreon or something set up, then just word of mouth.
And not for our will, but for the will of God to be done, right? Because that's what it's all about at the end of the day.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, my name again is Ariel.
My name is Alejandro.
And this has been the CTG podcast. Thank you for listening.
Ciao.